Hello and welcome to CNBC-TV18 special coverage here live from Davos 2025. I'm Shireen Bhan, and joining us here bright and early is a man who spent 27 years of his career in the IT services sector and has now decided to branch out and actually invest in companies that are doing things related to technology. Frank D'Souza, it's a pleasure to have you join us here. In your avatar is Recognize, a private equity company that you're now a part of. But appreciate your time here in Davos. Let me start by talking to you about the big headline. This is, of course, the Trump Davos, and all eyes on President Trump and the inauguration later tonight. What's the expectation? What will this Trump regime mean for IT services?
Well, Shireen, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here from Davos talking to you. Look, I think that as we were here in Davos on the eve of President Trump's inauguration, I think we're at a time when the theme of Davos is cooperation in the intelligent age. The intelligent age is a shout out to this incredible innovation that we've seen over the last few years in technology. And I think that what's going to happen is that over the coming years, the world, whether it's businesses, governments, civil society, is going to get more and more technology intensive. And as the world gets more and more technology intensive, it's going to require IT services companies to help to make that technology come to life, become real for all of us. And so as we sit here today, I have tremendous optimism for what the role of IT services is going to be over the coming decade. So
potential for significant growth from here, you believe?
I think that the IT services industry is reinventing itself. We've already seen that happen over the last several years. I think there's a fragmentation that's going on to some extent, where smaller companies are emerging, specialized companies in particular areas. That's part of our thesis at Recognize. We're investing against these smaller, more specialized services businesses. But I think you'll see pockets of very fast growth in IT services for those that have figured out how to build the operating model of the future.
Well, what is going to be the operating model of the future, Frank? Can I ask you this in the context of the AI bets that everyone's making? I mean, you walk down the promenade, everyone's hawking some kind of AI or the other. I mean, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you create moats, especially from an Indian IT services standpoint?
Yeah. You know, I think, Shireen, first of all, what I would say is that I've been following AI for decades now. When I came to the United States for the first time, I came to Carnegie Mellon University because I was interested in AI. That was 35 years ago or so. And I did classes in AI. And of course, for many, many years after that, AI was somewhat in the background. But as somebody who's followed the industry, I would say that this is probably one of the most profound technology shifts and technology changes that we've seen. And so I think the opportunities are very profound. I think from a services standpoint, services businesses, we've said this for quite some time, but the moment has come now where services businesses have to get more and more IP intensive.
Okay.
The old model of providing just people and very knowledgeable, capable people without some form of software or other IP. Now that IP could be software, it could be data, it could be algorithms in the AI world, but you've got to have some of that in order to be competitive. And so I think the IT services firms of the future are the ones that are going to be willing and able to invest in creating that specialization, and that specialization is going to come from investments in intellectual property.
So what will that mean then in terms of capital allocation, in terms of deploying capital to create these IP-led businesses that you speak of? Is there a willingness, is there appetite to do that at this point in time?
Yeah, look, I think it's difficult to make that transition, but I think the IT if you think about the services world and the software world, if I can put it that way, those two worlds have been relatively separate worlds in the past. And I think you're going to see those worlds coming closer and closer together. And therefore the P&Ls or the balance sheets of the services firms starting to look a little bit more like software, where you have to make some investments in R&D, allocate capital to upfront IP development, and then monetize that IP over time.
Do you believe that perhaps inorganic growth will drive this kind of IP-driven growth that you talk about?
I think it's certainly possible. I think for the larger firms that have the ability to do that, I think you'll start to see some some M&A. In fact, I would argue that maybe that started several years ago. In my time at Cognizant, we bought Trizetto, which was a software business. We bought it because we liked the intellectual property that they had in healthcare. They have a very strong software stack. And so perhaps, that M&A and others that were done in the industry around that time was the start of it. And I think you perhaps will see more of that.
Well, what are we talking about in terms of the kind of money that will be required to make the kind of transition that you speak of from an Indian IT services standpoint?
I think the jury is out because, frankly, the innovation that's taking place in AI, generative AI, agents, the agentic world that we're talking about, I think we're in the very, very early innings of that. And so I think the capital required is somewhat unknown at the moment. But what I would say is, if you look at the average software firm, the average software firm spends 15 or 20% of their revenue on R&D. And so, I think that gives you some sense of potentially what might be coming down the pike.
Let's talk about Recognize now and the kinds of bets that you're making. More than a dozen investments already done. What's driving the investment thesis at Recognize?
It's many of the things, Shireen, that we just talked about. So we are Recognize is we're a private equity firm. We're entirely focused on investing in and around technology services. So we are sector focused, and what we're looking for is we're looking to find the fast growth parts of IT services, find great management teams that are running services businesses in those areas, and looking for management teams and firms that have an operating model of the future, many of the things that we just talked about. And we want to provide to those firms both capital, but also we feel like we bring operating experience to the table, networks from our past and so on and so forth. And our goal is to accelerate growth of these businesses and drive fundamental value creation.
And you've already seen one exit, another likely sometime soon?
We've announced one exit already, a company called Torque, last year. And a few days ago, we announced that one of our portfolio companies, AST, the intention of IBM to acquire that business, that is not closed yet. It's expected to close sometime this quarter.
So what is the typical check size that you're writing for a company that you're looking to invest in today?
Shireen, our first fund was just shy of $1.3 billion. We've made, as you said, about 13 investments. So, on average, we are looking to deploy $50 to $100 million per investment, maybe a little bit more than that.
What about India? Is that going to be a focus area for you, for Recognize?
Absolutely. I say all the time, Shireen, that if you think about the global IT services industry, India in many ways is the epicenter. It has been, I think will continue to be, and so we look actively at firms both that are headquartered or domiciled in India, or that have, and also firms that have a significant presence in India. Across our portfolio, many of our firms have a significant presence in India. India is an important part of the delivery ecosystem of many of our firms, and we'll continue to look actively at it.
So what does 2025 look like in terms of the kind of capital that you're likely to deploy?
We just continue to look for great investments. We don't have targets specifically to deploy capital. We look for great investments. And
what about valuations? I mean, anything that has AI linked to it, even remotely, has seen its valuations skyrocket. What do you make of valuations?
Yeah, we still like the sector. We like the risk reward in IT or technology, what we call digital services. And what we are looking for are firms that are, properly valued, but we think we can accelerate their growth, increase their differentiation, and therefore create returns for our investors.
So 27 years of IT services. Are you missing that world, Frank?
Well, I still feel like I'm very much in that world. So it's not like I've gone from that world.
Running a business.
Shireen, there are moments when I miss being an operator, but I think the opportunity that I have now to be an investor, to look across the industry, but also importantly for me personally, to give back to another generation, a new generation of leadership teams that are building the next generation of services firms is really rewarding. So I'm having a great time.
But do you see more headwinds today for the Indian IT services space, or more tailwinds? Or is it a sort of mix and a balance of both?
I think it's a mix and a balance of both, and I think it's uneven. I think that at this moment, I think this is a moment of great opportunity, but I think it's also a moment of great disruption. And so we have to be clear-eyed about that. And given that it's a moment of great opportunity and a moment of great disruption, I think there will be winners and losers in the industry. And I think the winners will be the ones that are prepared to make the investments that are necessary to build the firm and the operating model of the future.
Which would then make it a big boy play?
I don't think so, no. In fact, I think that it will be a mix. In the recognized portfolio, and our thesis is that there's going to be a group of small, specialized firms that are really focused on particular parts of the market. And because of their focus and because of their specialization, they're going to be able to differentiate. But equally, I think there's a role for the big firms here as well. And so I think it's a question of who is able to make those investments, who's able to create that focus and differentiation. And there'll be winners and losers.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking specifically about some of the challenges that the sector is going to face, and H1B, of course, has been the big issue of debate and discussion, and how that plays out in the Trump era. How concerned would you be about that?
Look, I think that
and is it less a worry for Indian IT services companies and more a worry for actually American tech companies?
Yeah, look, I think that's the point. I've been talking about H1B visas for 27 years now, almost from the beginning of Cognizant. And, I think my genuine belief and feeling has not changed over that period of time, which is that the question about workforce has to start within each country with a discussion and a debate about how you develop the local workforce. And so, that requires, public-private collaborations, academia being involved, and so on and so forth. And so, specific to the H-1B in the context of the United States, developing the local indigenous workforce in the United States is critically important. Having said that, over 27 years that I've been in the industry, we've seen that there continue to be shortages of talent in different parts of the world at different points in time. And therefore, smart immigration policy allows us to fill those gaps when it's necessary. The United States right now is arguably one of the leading economies in the world in artificial intelligence, and therefore the need for AI talent is incredibly acute and profound. And so I think we need to find a prudent balance between local workforce development and smart immigration that enables that to happen.
And let me end by asking you about what looks exciting for you from an India standpoint, not just from the Indian IT services standpoint, but what looks exciting from the Indian economy perspective as well. The GCC story is the other story that's playing out in a significant way for India. What are the pockets of confidence and hope that you're focused on?
I think there were two things I would say, Shireen. I think that the GCCs, the rise of the GCCs, is a statement and a testament to the role that India is playing globally on the technology stage. The fact is that the GCCs in India, to me, are a representation of fundamental innovation and company-specific intellectual property being developed in India for companies on a global stage. So I think that's really, really, really good for India. The other thing that I'm really excited about for India as a technologist is the fact that we have a large digitally enabled population, and the India stack further enables that. In the world of AI, the winners are going to be the ones that are digitally enabled and have lots of data. And I think India has the conditions to really be a winner in AI indigenously, and we'll see that story play out over the next 10 years.
So where are we in the AI race today? From an India standpoint as well as an Indian IT services standpoint, what's your take?
Early innings, very, very early innings. I think the world is in early innings with this new wave of AI, with generative AI, agentic AI. It's still very, very early days. I think the opportunities are significant, but as I said before, there are going to be winners and losers here. We're at an important inflection point. And investing and being smart about the future is going to be important. Yes,
an important inflection point, but it also requires a significant amount of capital and, of course, a focus on IP, as you pointed out, for us to be able to create the differentiators and the moats around our businesses. Frank, many, many thanks. We wish you the very best of luck with Recognize. Thanks so much for joining us here in Davos and for your time.
Great to be with you, Shireen.
Well, that was Frank D'Souza with his take on the future for artificial intelligence and for where Indian IT services companies find themselves in this transition and in the roadmap, which could potentially see a balance between some tailwinds but challenges as well. We're going to take a break here on CNBC TV 18, but the conversations will continue from Davos. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment with more.